Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. And I do appreciate for throwing a curveball at you and changing the Wednesday to Tuesday, but I'm actually traveling this week. So welcome back to business and life as we knew it, I guess. So yeah, I'm actually going to be on a flight tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So fortunately, our guests today were able to change this thing around a little bit and do it on Tuesday. And I'm very appreciative of that because it's an incredibly important topic, sort of following in a series that we've been going on for the last few weeks. That's very important to me. I have so many friends who have gone through terrible things, not just because of COVID or during COVID, but even before COVID. You know, we all have too many friends who are sick, many who we've lost, and some who are dealing with, mental health issues. I know I have a close friend that I'm really helping through some of those challenges. So, it's an important topic and one that I think is close to all of us. Everyone either is someone or knows someone who's going through some pain. And it's why, I reached out to these two folks and asked them if they could join us. They have an organization I think that many of us are aware of, and if you're not, you're going to be by the end of this discussion here. But Behind the Scenes was started, I believe, in 2005, and I'm going to get corrected on this one, I think, as soon as I bring them on. But I think it was sort of an offshoot of ESTA, or at least it had some ESTA undertones and some ESTA people involved, and there still are ESTA people involved, including the executive director, Lori Rubinstein, who was a big part of ESTA until just recently. I think she actually just retired a couple of years ago from ESTA. But even prior to ESTA, Lori was very much instrumental in the founding of the TDA, the Theatrical Dealers Association, which then became ESTA. And that even predates me a little bit, the TDA. I was just really getting into the industry around that time. She started with the TDA, then I think in 1987 became ESTA. 1990, she became the first employee and eventually the executive director of ESTA, which is very cool. I mean, really, Lori has kind of dedicated her life and all of her works to directing these associations. And I know that just from doing We Make Events, it's a very tough gig to be a part of, and it's a thankless job for the most part. It doesn't usually pay very well. So anyone who dedicates themselves to it, hats off to you. So that's Lori. Lori's the executive director, and Jim Digby. I think most of you know Jim as a tour manager, production manager, working with artists like the Backstreet Boys, Bon Jovi, Marilyn Manson, so many artists, great artists, 4-time recipient of Tour Link's Production Manager of the Year, Parnelli Award for Production Manager of the Year in 2012, I think. And he's probably a 35-year veteran of the entertainment industry, and the founder and chairman of ESA, the Event Safety Alliance. So that's Mr. Digby. He is a director of Behind the Scenes. So I'm going to add them both into this stream right now, and we can get talking so you don't have to listen to me much. So hello, everyone. How are you?
Hi, Marcel.
Hey.
Hi, Marcel. Thanks for having us today.
Hi, Lori. Hi, Jim. No, thank you guys. I appreciate you doing this. As I said, and I talked to you guys in the pre here a little bit about the fact that I've done this for a few weeks now, and it was just by accident. So I reached out to friends and said, hey, I need a topic for next week. Who's got something? And a friend of mine, John Wiseman, called right away and he said, hey, we really need to talk about the fact that our industry is underprepared. People in our industry are way underprepared, not just for COVID. I mean, we all found out that companies and people were underprepared for COVID, and I don't blame them. I mean, I've run businesses for 30 years now. I might have 2 or 3 months of reserves, but not 18 or 20 or whatever that required. That was tough. And but we're underprepared from a standpoint of, I still know so many people who don't have health insurance, who don't have life insurance, who don't have, a will, who don't have so many of these things. And it's sad. It's horrible. It's something that I'm desperate to see change. And, one of the great things that I really enjoy about you two and about this organization is you're part of the catalyst for change. But Wiseman reached out to me and said, hey, I just lost a friend. And, unfortunately, it's another one of those sad stories where there's a GoFundMe being set up, and, we're going to try and take care of his family back home in the UK. And, young bride, young children, and just tragic. I mean, it's tragic, and we're always so underprepared for this. So we did that one. And then last week we had on Roby has this thing called Roby Backstage, which they started recently. And so we had the directors of that on to talk a little bit. You probably know Craig Burrows. So Craig was on, and some other folks from Roby Backstage. So, this one I'm really excited about, because I think you guys are the real experts when it comes to, how to collect and share a little bit of love, resources in our industry, and just what it takes to do those things. And I've listened to some very wealthy people talk about how hard it is to give away money. It's almost harder than getting the money, giving it away, because you have to decide who, you have to decide how, you have to make sure they're good causes and all of those things. So now I would like to shut up and actually start listening to you guys a little bit. So again, I appreciate you taking the time to do this today. I'm sorry I talk so much, but I did want to get through that lengthy sort of intro there. So, first I would like to ask you, what do you guys think the state of the industry is as we sit here right now? Are we fully recovered? Are we partially recovered? Are we gonna recover? Where do you think we're at right now?
Jim, you want to go first? Or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. I don't think we're anywhere near recovery. The industry, I think, has been very divided in many ways, because anyone working live events, of course, has in general not been working at all since March of 2020 until recently. Some people are just now starting to go back to work. What we're finding is that those who are experiencing really high levels of anxiety, right? They're going back to workplaces that look and feel completely different from the ones they left. They're still nervous about being out amongst other people. Coming out of isolation is hard. People have just lost muscle memory. They've lost, that edge, both physically and mentally. And so as they come back, everything's going to take a little longer to do. They have to remember how to do it. Safety checks that you would do automatically, you've got to really think about those. So one of the things we're doing is trying to encourage anyone who's producing shows, you need to give people a little extra time getting started. They got to get back into their roles. They've got to relearn how to do them. They're out of shape. So build that in to your production time.
That's such a great point that I really didn't even think of. But Jim, on the ESA side of things, like, are you doing stuff like, I could imagine more injuries all of a sudden because people, riggers, maybe they're out of climbing practice and they're going to slip a little bit more, or, all kinds of things like that. I never even thought of that. That's such a great point, Lori.
The Event Safety Alliance has a large insurance industry, entertainment insurance industry contingent following its work and on its board and in the dialogue with us routinely, as does ESTA. We all seem to agree that we're entering into the most dangerous time for our industry that we've seen in a very, very, very long time. the next 6 months, year. It's hard to set a time horizon to it because we're not really finished with COVID yet. And the industry has lost by some counts as much as 30% of its experienced workforce. There's no question that portion of the workforce that has stayed behind and is returning to work has lost not only their physical acuity for the job, but their mental acuity for the job. The words, instinct and intuition, our instinctive behavior, our intuitive behaviors, the things that we kind of do without even having to think more than once about them.
Right.
All of those senses are dulled. And while you mentioned the riggers, and certainly that's one of the highest risk categories, I mean, it's the electricians, it's the caterers, it's the runners, it's the forklift drivers, it's the stagehands, it's the truck drivers. It's everyone who is experiencing this dulled senses state of being to no one's fault.
Yeah.
It's just fact. We haven't been rehearsing. We haven't been practicing what we do.
Someone was even telling me he did had to do an overnight programming session, an LD friend of mine. And he said, I drank all the coffee I could. I did everything I could, but I just wasn't as sharp. So, I mean, even something that you would think is just a no-brainer, those skills are going to bounce back just like that, right? But, you've been going to bed at 9 o'clock at night after your day full of Netflix movies. It's a very different thing. So, I mean, really great points.
The other thing we're hearing, though, Marcel, is from the people, particularly those on the film, TV, broadcast side. A lot of them have been working consistently, but under really difficult conditions. So their anxiety levels, there was some guilt at having jobs when other people didn't, but they were being asked to work often longer hours with fewer people. Everyone was trying to cut down on expenses. They were doing more. Many times their jobs entailed more. So those people are experiencing a different kind of anxiety and a different level of it. So everyone's coming at this, depending on their circumstances, but it's a really tough time for the industry right now. And as you alluded to earlier, things were hard in this industry before the pandemic hit.
Right. No, and I mean, so you guys are talking about the fact that this is potentially a really dangerous time. And, I think add to that, it's sort of like lunacy time too, because you've got so many shows going out at the same time. I mean, July is a crazy month and October is a completely, bananas month for touring. And I've talked to shops that are telling me, we've got 15 tours going out in October, and it's
1/10 of the staff that they had before they got
1/10 of the staff, newly trained staff, who are new to the industry, for example, including, truck drivers and people loading the trucks, labor. Some of these people are unskilled, inexperienced people. Yeah. I mean, loading a truck is loading a truck, but is it,
it's a skill.
Well, and you got road cases that have wheels and might weigh 600 pounds or something, those things roll over you. It doesn't feel too good, so
I would argue that there isn't a sector in our trades, be that truck driver or caterer or rigger or production manager, that isn't a highly crafted skill.
Right.
More of it, some of it may be more back labor and some of it may be more brain labor, but it's still all an area where danger exists. And that danger is certainly heightened right now, for sure.
Well, and then you add to it the crazy hours and some bands are going to be out trying to earn their money quickly, so they might do five or six shows in a week, and I mean, it's not a normal life, and we've all come to learn that over a period of many, many years. Try learning it in a big hurry while 20 shows are going out of the shop or whatever. I mean, I would tend to agree with you. I think another challenge that we've got, and Laura, you just mentioned it, that some people might be a little bit stressed or have some anxiety because they're working and other people aren't. And in reverse, I've seen a lot where friends of ours in the UK, are pretty frustrated right now because they're watching all these tours and shows happening in the US, and they're seeing soccer matches for 80,000 fans or whatever with 1 million outside, but yet they can't get 5,000 people in a venue or whatever, right? So, you've got that stress and anxiety going on as well. Like, over here, we tend to, in our industry, pretend that it's over. But in the UK, it ain't over. And they're looking at Facebook and LinkedIn and stuff and going, what's going on? Why not me? So,
well, the added stress to that is if you're someone from our business who has found a parachute job to keep you alive through COVID, keep your family alive through COVID, and we still can't, no one can say with conclusiveness that we're done with this. Why would you leave that parachute job only to go on a tour that might have to cancel a month from now because there's been another COVID flare up?
Yeah, that's why we're seeing so many people who just have left the industry. Some may eventually come back, but a lot of people have taken early retirement. So there's a real drain of experienced people out of the industry. No question about it.
I think that part that we're talking about right now, I think is less of a problem than I expected, because I thought maybe a lot of people were going to stay outside the industry in their parachute job, as you call it, Jim. I think the people who love this industry are dying to get back to it as quickly as they possibly can. Most of those people, anyways. Some of them, and I don't blame them. I mean, I'm off the road. I'm home at 6 o'clock every night with my family. I kind of dig this. This is cool. So, I kind of understand both sides of that, I guess. Marcia says loading
a truck
is an art form. Yes, it is. I mean, it's not only an art form.
So is driving a bus, Marcia.
Yeah, heck yeah. Have you guys seen that? What is that show called that's on Amazon Prime about touring? It's mostly punk bands and stuff. It was done by Dave Grohl. It's a great show, but they talk a little bit about drivers and stuff. If anyone's watching and can tell me the name of that show, just go ahead and tell me and I'll put your comment up. But so where's the industry right now? We're not entirely positive that we're out of this. Like you said, nobody can say that we're completely over it. Yet everything's opening, everything's a go. Are there special, like Jim from, again, the ESA side, are there special protocols and stuff that we're trying to follow, even though I think it's getting harder and harder to get people to listen at this point?
Well, yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge the ESA has had all along, right? Is that we're an industry of a mindset of I've been doing it this way for 20 years. Why should I change now?
Yeah.
Which are the deadliest words in any business practice. We early on in May of 2020 published the first event-specific reopening guidance, which was comprehensive, about 33 pages. We revisited that in November because the science from the CDC had changed slightly. We learned that, the surface contamination, for example, was not as big a risk. And then recently we released a checklist form guidance that was crafted as a collaboration between NEVA and NITO and the CDC and Event Safety Alliance and others. So there are guidances out there. We also just put out a virtual learning opportunity called the Pathogen Prepared Professional. While there are dozens of COVID compliance officer trainings out there, we took a different view, a much longer view, with the idea that pathogens are with us forever. COVID is just the first of the long chain of these events.
Right.
And so our Pathogen Prepared Professional training is intended to get the mindset of the entire workforce into, hey, let's be better about high-touch surfaces. Let's be better about when we have a cold, put on a mask.
But Jim, you called it something a little different for, after
a
couple of beers. Can you imagine somebody spitting all over themselves trying to say that after a couple of beers?
Yeah, that's a good one, Marcel. We went all over the place trying to get the right name for it.
It sounds cool. It's just hard to say.
Event safety access training now is free, thanks to a collaboration with one of our insurance friends. So, yeah, we're taking the long view that we've got to increase the way we do safety in the way we do business, as does ESTA and all the work that they're doing. And we just got to get people to appreciate that and value it.
Yeah.
Well, and along those lines, Marcel, one of the things that we launched in March, I guess it was, which is really about taking care of yourself and those you're on the job with, which is the mental health first aid courses. Mental health first aid is an international training course and is accredited in each country there are about 25 countries around the world that now offer it. And what we were able to do is find someone who was accredited to teach it online. That's a relatively new thing for that course. And it's someone who has decades of experience in the entertainment industry. So we can really help relate it directly to what people are doing. Jim was just helping to facilitate a class, in fact, earlier today. We've had a really tremendous response to that. And the idea is, if you take a first aid course, you're not going to come out of it a doctor. But
Right.
You learn how to keep someone safe and stable until you can help get them to professional help. And this is the same idea. It gives you tools and resources to approach someone that you think might be having a problem, mental health problem, an emotional problem, teaches you how to talk to them, how to get them to the correct resources, and just to help stabilize them.
What an important point, because we take CPR training and all of these other types of things, but I personally have dealt with this mental health thing very recently with other people that I was coaching through situations, challenges, just life being thrown at them. And I've done it several times with people very close to me, with people maybe a little further away that were total strangers. But I have no idea what I'm doing. And I actually, we had just scheduled this, and I reached out to Lori last week at one point saying, hey, I've got a problem with a person that I'm talking to. Can you kind of talk to me about what I should or shouldn't be saying? Because the last thing I want is for someone to call me and say, hey, we checked their cell phone. The last person they talked to was you, and I'm like, oh my God, no, I can't.
This is really where our energies are focused, both Lori's and mine right now, and mine because of Lori and because of the Behind the Scenes Foundation. We now have this training specific to our industry. I had an artist die by suicide a few years ago, and I took the training in 2018. I took the youth version of this training because my children were very connected to that artist and were friends with him. And I wanted to be able to monitor their behavior. And it was a life changer for me as a father and as a professional in this space.
Yeah.
And now that Lori and Behind the Scenes Foundation have been able to bring this training to our industry, our community, it makes a little bit more sense. It speaks more to us. And the way we're looking at it is much like CPR. It's a triage opportunity. It's when the problem has escalated from I'm just not feeling well today to I now am in a crisis mode. You the individual who's had the training, know how to interject, know how to step in, just like you would CPR until help arrives or until you can get that person to help. That's super important. And unfortunately, it's a necessary backstop for our industry. And at the same time, in other channels and in other places, there's work being done about how to create an atmosphere, how to create an ecosystem, an organism on tour or in a workshop, in a vendor's shop, of how to avoid getting to needing triage. These two things are symbiotic. They're working together. And much like CPR, much like heart attacks being brought on by poor food choices, blood conditions, poor exercise, poor sleep, a lot of those are contributors to mental health as well.
Yeah.
If we can get these fellows over on the other side, and strong men and women who are working on this problem from a holistic, let's set up exercise programs on tour. Let's make sure people are eating right. Let's make sure there's trauma-informed leadership that gives space and compassionate space for folks to have a bad day. And then we've got the backstop of mental health first aid, just in case it goes really badly. And right now we need that.
Absolutely.
Well, and sometimes I think it's just a matter of forcing communication on people or pulling it out of them, getting people involved in communication. And, I know over the past 18 months, I've been accused of being a narcissist or whatever, because I keep creating these talks, whether it's I've had this weekly Zoom chat that became this venue thing. But I did it for, 60 weeks or something, where every single week on Wednesday at 5:00, people knew that they could dial into this Zoom and have 50, 60, 70 other people in our industry to sit and talk to on a Zoom call and tell us your problems or ask questions or even just have a drink and have some fun with, other people in the industry and feel figure out how other people are coping with it. Sometimes we talked about unemployment, who's getting what, how's it working? PPP, have you applied? Who did you apply with? What are you doing? How are you getting it? It was just keeping people engaged and talking and realizing you're not in this alone.
Right.
That's one of the biggest things. Like the gentleman that I talked with you about, Lori, a lot of my conversation with him is just saying, I know you feel like you're the only person who's ever gone through problems like this. And I try really hard not to compare my own personal situation, but I say, look, I'm in a pretty good place right now, but let me tell you some stories, and some of those hit home. Some of them are like, oh yeah, great, rich white guy telling me how bad he has it or whatever, right? But I think you have to take people through some of those journeys to kind of relate it to their own. And I don't know, man, I struggled with it, I'll tell you. So I could use your training in a big way.
Well, Marcel, and just to let you know and others who are listening, in addition to the mental health first aid training, and if people can't devote the time or whatever for that, on our website, there's a whole raft of suicide prevention information. And there's a poster, which is Know the Warning Signs, that we encourage everyone to put up backstage, call boards, wherever they can, because it's some of the key warning signs that someone might be at risk for taking their life. And then there are 5 steps that are sort of generally agreed on that everyone should take. They're very simple. The first one is ask. But of course, people go, well, should I ask? Isn't that the wrong thing to do? Want to put it in their mind. And what we've done is created some just really practical guidance and examples for each of the 5 steps that talks about how you ask, how you listen, those kinds of things.
When you say ask, though, do you mean ask the person who looks to be in a bad situation? Like if
Absolutely.
I see someone who's struggling, I need to ask them, are you okay?
You want to ask
that's part of the training, Marcel, in that it's knowing what to ask, when to ask. It's knowing how to gauge the level of crisis. Are we in crisis, or are we need to help this person out?
Right.
And then when you determine that you're in crisis, there are a number of questions that you ask to refine that. And at that point, you take next steps. That's the value of this training. It builds the confidence for lay people like us to know, oh, you know what? I would never, ever have thought that it's okay to ask that question, or that question is the right question to ask in this instance for fear that I might cause more harm. And it turns out the science proves that hardest question is the right question to ask, as are the next 3 that precede or come after it. So, that's the biggest value of this training, in that it prepares average everyday people like us to be there, because there's not a mental health professional on every set. There's not a mental health professional on every bus or in every corner of every shop. But we, just like we can give CPR and pull somebody through to professional help, we can give mental CPR and pull folks through to professional help, which is the intention of the
I agree so much.
And we're really seeing a wide range of people take the class, everything from company managers for national tours, to individual workers in different departments who just want to be able to help their coworkers if they see someone in distress. So it's really designed for everyone, of course.
And while we've been doing it online, Behind the Scenes Foundation has been doing it online now since I think May we started. Huh, Lori? We're at 18 classes now?
March started. Yeah.
So we've done 18 or more classes.
Yeah, I think we're at about 18. Today was 18.
Yeah. So that means we've trained almost 100 people, I think, by now, maybe a little bit more.
More than that.
Yeah. But we're doing our first one. I'm sorry, Lori?
Over 200 people.
Oh, over 200. That's fantastic. So we're doing our first one live in person with the Behind the Scenes Foundation trainer in Nashville on July 14th.
Very cool.
And we're trying to tap into the Nashville community. That's one of the ones that's off to the races and working right now. Try to capture them before they leave the gate and say, please go out with this knowledge also. So that can be found on, is that the event safety line?
Yeah, if you go to btshelp.org, you can find both the online classes, which are offered at a variety and dates of times. We've now posted through August, the classes. And then the NAM class is btshelp.org/MFHA_NAM. MHFA for mental health.
Or you,
Yikes.
or you can find it at the Event Safety Alliance website as well.
Yeah. Good.
And so
Well,
there's
maybe Lori, if you could just shoot me an email right after we're done here, and I'll shoot out an email to our folks and just make sure that people have access. So if I sign up for one of those courses, what is it? So I'm assuming I pay a fee.
You pay a fee, but if you are a member of IATSE, you're eligible for training trust fund reimbursement. And also, Chauvet Professional has made us a grant to be used for scholarships for those who can't afford the course fee. It's $125 per course, so people can apply for scholarship if they don't have that money. And the course is in two parts. There is what we call a pre-work, a self-study portion, an online portion that takes you about somewhere between 2 and 4 hours to complete. And then it's followed by either a virtual class, live class with an instructor, or in the case of the NAM one, and we'll eventually be doing others, an actual in-person class with the instructor.
Right.
And the classes are limited in size, no more than 20. So you really get interaction. There are breakout rooms used, etc. So there's a lot of interaction amongst the class and the chance to work on scenarios that have been written to be scenarios that people would encounter in our industry, not your usual office scenario kind of thing.
Right.
And a chance to practice the soft skills as you try to navigate this conversation with someone who may be in stress.
So the people that you're targeting to take the class are not individuals who are going through these challenges. It's people who have access to lots of people, or, you might be a company, a manager of a business. You might be, a production manager on a tour. You might be all kinds of people in those types of positions, right?
Yes, but actually we're finding that a lot of individuals who are not crew chiefs, production managers, are not in leadership, they want to take it too, because they want to be able to reach out to their colleagues that they are with every day and want to be able to provide assistance. It's really a mixed group.
A disturbingly low percentage of leaders taking the class, I'm afraid to say, and mostly at crew and crew chief level, which is great because that their connection is closer, in some instances, than the leaders. But we have to transform the way leaders lead in our space as well, and this is one of the ways to do that.
Well, some of that is educating the educators, like educating the leaders too, because I know that until I reached out to you guys, I really didn't know about some of these things. So I kind of learned as I dug through your website or as I talked to Lori or whatever. So, I think doing things like this, without patting our own backs, but doing things like this where other people are hearing it and sharing it on their Facebook pages or LinkedIn or whatever, that's important. But even just, like I said, I encourage people all the time to not just reach out to people who you haven't heard from for a while, but to create opportunities where you're doing, like now with Zoom and stuff, it's so easy to connect. So why don't you connect more often? Why don't you, I'll tell you, I have a call with my sisters who are in Canada, my 3 sisters, every Saturday at 11 o'clock in the morning. We have a call. Before that, I would go 6 months without talking to my sisters, because we're all adults. You don't really need to reach out every day or whatever. And we've just never been that kind of a family, right? But now we have a call every Saturday. I know completely what they're up to. So
it's particularly important, Marcel, that if people are aware of colleagues who they know who have suffered in the past, any kind of distress, whatever it might be, whether it's life changes, emotional wellness issues, they need to reach out to them. Don't wait for that person to reach out.
I agree.
Reach out to them. Do it on a regular basis. Follow up with them.
And one of the things we're coaching is, reframing the question, how are you doing? Right. And trying to coach people to both say more than just fine, but also trying to ask that question in a way that how you doing initiates a conversation that is more important than the superficial response. No, really, how you doing?
Yeah.
and digging in that way at whatever level you're taking this training, that gives people the open door to go, oh, right, he's really asking, or she's really asking how I'm doing. Maybe I can say it here.
Well, that's such a good point, because, again, while I was doing these Zoom happy hour calls, I would notice that, the first 8 or 10 weeks, it kept growing in size. And then you started seeing some people dropping off. And some of those people were people who were previously really engaged, and then they became less engaged. And then they started dropping off. And I started reaching out to either friends of mine who knew them, or directly to those people, and just saying, hey, is everything okay? Or you go, oh yeah, I'm really sorry, I haven't been on the calls, but I'm just not up to it anymore. It just doesn't feel right. And, having those conversations one-on-one, if you don't want to do it in 50 or 60 people, let's talk together just one-on-one. Call me anytime.
Well, and we've seen over COVID that, our journeys, our community's journeys are similar, right? Everybody started out by many people started out by baking sourdough bread, and then many people were pickling cucumbers. And the roller coaster of emotions that we're going through that are similar to each other is what connects us. It's what binds us.
Yeah.
And I think many people have gotten to a place where there's Zoom fatigue, which is a real thing.
Yep.
There's COVID PTSD, and there's a class of folks who just don't want to engage and share this story yet again about COVID, right?
Yeah.
They'd rather not engage and hope that relationship's preserved when it's over than get in and say that, oh my gosh, am I really talking about COVID again?
Yeah.
So, we as leaders have to make room for all of those responses. And we have to be able to recognize the signs that somebody doesn't really want to engage in this conversation right now. So even as something as simple as a text message, hey, sending love, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that's important. And if that opens a new conversation, then so be it. But we're at that point where many people are just sick and tired of talking about COVID and what's going to happen.
It's interesting because this whole COVID thing took on so many different curves and twists and turns and phases, right? And stages. But, I know so many people who are like top lighting designers, top front of house engineers, just top people in the industry who started out really positive. And again, they just kind of kept dropping down a little bit. And then I would be getting calls from them on a weekend saying, I really don't know what to do. I'm going to refinance my house for now. And, I'm going to get rid of one of the cars. We don't need to. And, but do you have any advice for me? And, so I was trying to dive in, but then I started noticing that my companies were starting to be challenged because I wasn't paying attention to my companies anymore, because I was trying to solve the world's problems. And, I was diving into everyone's problems, but I had to kind of back off a little bit because I was like, whoa, I'm not looking over here, and things are starting to get, messy over there too. So yeah, it was a challenging time, that's for sure. And we're not totally out of it, but it certainly is nice to mix in really super positive calls with so many negative ones now. That part I think is pretty
As
cool.
long as you're not setting up false hope, as long as we're not creating false hope.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think we need to remember, things were difficult in the industry. It took its toll on people emotionally, mentally, long before COVID. And it'll get back to that as well. It's just a hard life for people, and it takes its toll. So as Jim said, there are people working to try to organically deal with some of these issues, but they're not going to go away. So information about these types of resources and stuff really stand you in the long term, because they can be needed by people to help them cope as they get back into the things and the long hours and all of that.
Completely agree. So when you first started behind the scenes, it was more about people who were getting injured without insurance, or people who were getting, God forbid, cancer or other, terrible, either terminal or non-terminal, but debilitating diseases. And then it just transitioned or grew to become more than that, right?
It's helping people who are seriously ill or injured, or if they have an immediate dependent family member, like a partner, a spouse, a dependent child who's ill or injured, is still a core part of our mission.
Right.
And absolutely not changed. But we recognized, starting really 2 years ago, that mental health, emotional wellness, suicide prevention were becoming bigger and bigger issues in our industry. And that we wanted to try and address it in a way that was specific to our industry. And so what we did is brought together a steering committee of a mix of industry professionals and mental health professionals. So we have representatives from all the major entertainment industry assistance organizations that people are familiar with: Music Cares, the Actors Fund, Motion Picture and Television Fund, Will Rogers, the AFC up in Canada, etc. And then also industry experts and those who have a specific expertise in health and safety, etc. And the very first thing we did in the fall of 2019 was we conducted an industry-wide survey and just said, what's going on out there? We wanted to hear from people what their challenges were, their mental and emotional challenges were. And we had a tremendous response to that. And we learned a lot. It really set the roadmap, if you will, for everything we've developed in the initiative since then. Things like people told us one of the most difficult things was to find a therapist who understood anything about what working in the industry was like. They got really tired of spending their first few sessions educating the therapist about in the industry. So we created the Entertainment Industry Therapist Finder. So when you go to that, you know you're finding a therapist who already gets it. They already understand what work is like in the industry. You don't have to educate that therapist.
I'd like to be a fly on the wall for one of those calls where you're educating a therapist about our industry. That's got to be quite a process. They're like, really? Really? Yeah,
but
yeah,
you
it's
don't have to
true.
worry about that anymore. You can get right into what your issues are. So those kinds of things, the suicide prevention things. We have an online self-assessment, because what we learned is a lot of people were sort of feeling things, of course, throughout all this that they've never felt before. And they wanted to understand more about what they were feeling. Maybe they weren't quite ready to reach out for help, but they could go online and take any one of about 13 different assessments: anxiety, depression, PTSD, substance use, etc. And it just let them know that, yeah, maybe they were indeed dealing with that. And here's what anxiety is.
Yeah.
Nothing to be afraid of. Here's what it is, and leads them to some resources. And what we've discovered is, for people who are having a very hard time vocalizing how they were feeling, just taking these online self-assessments really gave them a vocabulary to describe what they're feeling. They're completely anonymous. No one knows you've ever taken it. No one knows your results. They're free. And it's a way to just check in on what you're feeling and maybe learn how to describe what you're feeling.
I guess that anonymity has to play a big role in that. Not everyone wants to come out and say, hey, I've got this kind of a problem, or I've got, that you don't want to feel weak, or you don't want other people to go, hey, that dude over there is crazy, or whatever. So yeah, that's good. Now, one of the things that I've heard when I've spoken to people about behind the scenes is that, oh, but they're a theater company. They're a theater organization. They're interested in dealing with Broadway folks.
Not
and
at all.
Obviously, Jim, you're not a Broadway
Not
guy.
at all. We probably have the widest remit of any of the organizations, assistance organizations, because we help entertainment technology professionals across everything: live events, film and television, broadcast, trade shows and conventions, corporate work. We have an extremely wide remit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that could just be baggage from the fact that you were in ESTA and TDA for so long, that people just assume, oh, well, she must be really focused on the theater folks or whatever. Again, it's a misconception, but it's something that I've heard multiple times. And I've said, no, if you look at their board, you'll see that it's very diverse as far as, the involvement of people that you've got there. So sorry, Jim.
No, that's okay. I interrupted you. The Event Safety Alliance suffers from the same issue. We were born of the tragedy in Indiana in 2011, but with every new tragedy, Bataclan, Pulse nightclub shooting, Manchester, Las Vegas, with every new tragedy, we've expanded our remit. We've collected new subject matter experts, and we've broadened the voice with which we speak. And we've crafted the industry's only body of knowledge with respect to event safety, and it's broad reaching. In North America, I should say. We borrowed from the Purple Guide in the UK with permission, We've collected other sources from around the world, but because we were born of that Indiana State Fair moment in time, the perception of us is that we are speaking to live touring and outdoor festivals.
Right.
It's a big part of our audience.
Or
It's a big place
staging,
where,
even more specific. Yeah,
it's a big place where it goes wrong, but it's what we craft for the entire community, Broadway and you name it.
Yeah, no, that's important point.
Marcel, I want to raise one other thing that we learned in 2019 in our survey was still a very large issue in the industry, but we're hearing it consistently. We do a post mental health first aid class survey, and a lot of the comments refer to it as well. And that is what a big issue bullying and harassment still are in our industry, how prevalent they still are, and across all aspects of the industry. Again, live events, touring, theater, film, TV, it's a really big issue, and it plays a huge role in mental health, obviously.
Right.
Because it impacts not only the person who's the target of the bullying, but it impacts the entire workplace, right? The whole attitude of everyone and the atmosphere of the workplace.
Yeah, and we've expanded that. Sorry, Lori, I did it again.
Hey, Jim.
I was just going to say we've expanded the way we talk about that in support of Lori's programs to emphasize the need for psychological safety on the workspace as much as we need physical safety on the workspace. Right. And psychological safety in our mind is it doesn't matter who you are, you deserve to be safe. It doesn't matter what your lifestyle choices are, you deserve to be safe. It doesn't matter what mistakes you made yesterday, you deserve to be safe. So creating a psychologically safe workspace is as much of an imperative as having the mental health safety net as much as an imperative making sure that the riggers are finishing the shackles.
That's got to be so challenging though in a touring environment where, people have nicknames that, you would think are offensive and like you got 9 people on a bus and one comes out and goes, they called me fat, and how do you deal with that? Like, is that bullying or is that just life on a bus with 9 people?
No, I think there was a time where that was life on a bus with 9 people. And I think what we're trying to identify is we really need to grow past that time. It's not that life isn't taking us in that way. Life is taking us in a way where we all respect each other, and suck it up buttercup isn't a phrase we use anymore. Now, there will always be operations that use those things where it's okay. But I think part of the idea of recrafting what our leadership looks like is creating this psychologically safe workspace, as well as many of these other needs that we have. We don't have HR. We don't have clean scopes that people understand their place. We don't have reporting mechanisms. We don't have lessons learned diaries of things. These are all important things as we go into the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of information. We've been working on bullying, harassment, intimidation for many months now, the steering committee, and we've created a whole campaign to try and eliminate this from the workplace, because it does have a tremendous psychological effect on everyone involved. So I just encourage people, there are posters that you can put up, there's information about what you can do in the workplace, et cetera, and it's something that we're continuing to work on.
But again, are we viewing a tour bus as the same workplace as an office?
Absolutely.
Really?
It's a workplace. Absolutely. You want to treat everyone with respect. You want everyone to feel psychologically safe.
I'm not arguing.
Psychologically safe,
I'm just saying that's got to be challenging, because I know a lot of these people on these buses, and everybody plays with everybody. It's fun. But it's fun until it isn't, I guess, until somebody.
Well, I mean, and look, the last thing any of us are trying to do is take away the unique character of working in our business, right? That's the joy. The fact that we do get to create a family organism that's not our family, and travel down the road or travel on Broadway for a few weeks or months or a year or two if you're lucky, and the joy that comes with that, and the kind-hearted kind of knock-on name-calling stuff that is indicative of we're a family unit. But there's a point in time where that goes to now you're just harassing, and And we come from a place where that "so what" has been the response for the last 60 years. And I think what we're advocating for is we don't develop new, young, fresh talent in today's world, because the people I see trying to come into the business are looking for ways to learn, are looking for HR. They're expecting a safe workplace. Whereas we got into it because it wasn't safe. So while it's a difficult challenge, that in and of itself doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Damn it, Jim, I think I need some training.
Well,
I need some
I was that guy.
training.
I was that guy. I think all of us can say, Alexa,
Right.
I make no bones about it. I hold my hand up first to say I was pretty bad at that. I didn't know what microaggressions were, but sure as shit used them as I went through life. I
just have a very sarcastic sense of humor that I think if you either don't get it or think that it's addressed at you personally or something, could be misconstrued and mistaken. And
it's a given that we try. I learned by being bullied. The guys who taught me in the business, the wind up was the teaching mechanism. School was wind up. Digby, take case 200, and I chase around looking for case 200 at the top of the loadout. There never was a case 200, right? Those kinds of Digby, climb up there, do that. Well, there was no need to go up there and do that.
Right.
That's how we used to.
Yeah,
be.
They're like, look at the idiot up in the truss.
Some of that is fun, but it's also not, I think, the path we're heading on now.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And
we're not judging anybody. It is just simple fact that we've gotten here because there hasn't been a need for us to do anything different. But I think responsibility is changing.
Yeah. So, big question: for the organization, what are some of your greatest challenges? And I would assume raising money is always a challenge when you're in a 501.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And behind the scenes, because we only assist behind the scenes people, we don't assist performers of any kind, artists of any kind. It makes it harder. We don't have big names to go out and fundraise for us. So,
right.
What the industry does, we're supported entirely by the industry. And it takes so many different forms. You've got someone like the Light Power Collection in Germany who has, been a supporter for many, many years. And sales of Preston's work benefit the charity. You've got the Long Reach Long Riders, the motorcycle group made up of industry folks from across the country who just finished their 18th ride, who have been a tremendous source of support.
Who are they? I don't know them.
Long Reach Long Riders is a group of motorcycle enthusiasts, and every year they do a week-long ride in a different part of the country, and people are welcome to join them, whether it's for the day or the whole week. They raise money, tremendous amount of money. They pay all their own expenses, so every dime they raise goes to the charity. And they have raised $500,000 in the 18 years just for us. They've also raised funds for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. So they're remarkable. We have a pledge of support program where industry companies have either pledged the proceeds from a particular product or a service to benefit the charity. So they'll name that, and any proceeds from sales go to that. They name their percentage. General just donations. People have been naming us for memorial donations or wedding donations, birthday donations. All of that makes a difference. All of that helps.
Right.
Someone just asked about Bill Sepsis. There was actually a core group of 4 people who started the ride together. Bill was certainly one of those. Yes.
Cool.
And so
aside from fundraising, what are some other challenges? I mean, I guess getting the money dispersed, that's a fun challenge, I'm guessing.
The people that come to us for grants, the people that are ill or injured, need way more money than we're able to give, even working in concert with the other industry charities, which we do all the time. Collectively, we find that people are in such dire shape often. And I think someone touched on it early on. People haven't saved anything. They haven't planned for the future. They haven't planned for the rainy day. A lot of it is, of course, due to our medical system. But a lot of it is people not planning in any way, shape, or form. And it creates, when they do get hurt or injured, which is always unexpected, or they come down with cancer or whatever it might be, it really floors them. And frequently people will wait too long to come and ask for help. They'll wait until they're really in the hole. The sooner people can come, the more we can be of assistance to them. So it's really getting the word out to those who are ill or injured that help is available. That's a big one. Particularly difficult to get the word to freelance people. We've got the IATSE is a tremendous partner and very good about getting the word out to their members that help is available. But for those who are freelance and don't have a central hub of information, it can be very hard. So we ask everyone who's listening, if you know of someone who's ill or injured and needs assistance, please make sure they know about behind the scenes.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's really, that's a key thing, is just getting the word out to people, both that help is there and that all the mental health tools and resources that we've developed over the last year and a half are available to help people as well.
Right. No, I mean, it's such an important organization. And I think, so how has COVID sort of ramped up or changed? Like, did it make it harder to get funding, easier to get funding, more need, I'm guessing?
The industry has been remarkably generous, I must say. They're wonderful. The corporate donations have disappeared for the most part, with a few very notable exceptions. Certainly the Chauvet Reset Fund to help with the mental health first aid initiative has been very helpful. But for the most part, corporate donations have not disappeared completely. People have tried to do what they can, but certainly been much, much lower amounts. But the Long Reach Long Riders had a record-breaking year this year, and it's all small donations. It's each rider goes out and just hits up their list of friends and colleagues and that kind of thing.
That's right.
But we want to do more, both grant-wise and more on the mental health initiative side. So obviously, it's the donations that help us to do that. And we have people who are part of our Ghostlight Society, remembering behind the scenes in their estates. Thank you, Marcia. And I don't know if there's any others on, but I saw Marcia's name come through.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more that we could do with more resources.
Right.
A lot more programs we could put in place with more resources.
And there's no federal funding for an organization like this?
No, unfortunately, there's not. There's not.
It's funny because they keep using this T word, trillion, and you'd think $1 billion could fall off at some point, or $1 million.
Yeah.
How about $1 million? Just $1 million. $1 million would go a long way in an organization such as yours, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, while I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm thinking there must be a way that we could add a little, like, at Publix where they have would you like to give $1 to cancer research or to whatever it is. There must be a way that next to my checkout thing, I can add a little donation button that says donate to behind the scenes.
Yeah,
so I'm going to look into that. I promise you that.
One thing I want to mention, Marcel, is we have given away over $1 million in grants.
Wow.
To our industry,
Wow. That's incredible. So, in roughly 15 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's really incredible.
No grant is large, so we've helped a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, anything else? Anything we've missed?
Yeah, so we're doing Summer NAM in Nashville, July 15 and 16.
Nice.
And we've got 2 full days of free content for folks looking to get into the industry and folks coming back to the industry. The first day is around all of those tools and techniques you need to get yourself a job in the business and what to be thinking about while you're getting a job in the business. And the second day is all about safety. How do you stay alive once you get that job in the business?
Yeah.
So that's brought to you by Showmakers and Event Safety Alliance and Summer NAM in Nashville, July 15th and 16th.
What is the relationship between ESA and behind the scenes? None, or just that shared directors? Or
well, we asked Jim to sit on our board quite a number of years ago now, because we knew that in addition to physical safety, mental health was a big issue for him and concern for his fellow colleagues, etc. and just wanting to take care and make this industry a better place. So, Behind the Scenes is an independent 501c3 organization. You mentioned its ties to ESTA, and it was conceived, the idea of it was conceived by ESTA, but it has always been a separate 501c3 with a separate board of directors. There are only 2 directors in common. The president and vice president of ESTA also serve on the board, but we have a board of, I think, 13. So it's just a small group. Jim is there really not in his position as chairman of ESA. He's in there because he's Jim Digby, and he has the interests and the expertise that he does as an individual.
He does good board.
He
does good board.
Yeah.
And the Event Safety Alliance, to follow on with that, is a 501c6, and Joe Makers is a 501c3. And really, the Event Safety Alliance and ESTA are symbiotic in that ESTA does the hard work with the technical standards program of digging in and creating the protocols and the standards that we need across our industry. And so Event Safety Alliance speaks to the culture of safety. What we try to do is create safety and make safety systemic throughout our business and try to drive the culture of safety in support of the great work of ESTA, the technical standards program. And in fact, because of technical standards program, the Event Safety Alliance now has 2 of its chapters from the body of knowledge are now American national standards, ANSI codes, because of the technical standards program in ESTA. So the community is small amongst us safety nerds, and we're doing as much as we can, I believe, to keep each other meaningful and support each other.
All the organizations, I mean, Behind the Scenes obviously has a relationship with Event Safety Alliance as well. They're extremely supportive of our work. We try to be of their work. Same with Showmaker.
And USITT.
We're all in touch with each other. We're all trying to support because we're all working towards the same goals.
Right.
Just from a slightly different point of view.
And I commend you both because, shooting off my big mouth on one of these Zoom calls where we had 60 or 70 people on one Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Someone, I think it might've been Steve Warren or somebody from the UK came on and said, yeah, we just did this We Make Event thing where we lit up 700 buildings across the UK, to support our industry and blah, blah, blah. And Plaza came up with this name, We Make Events, this hashtag. And I said, well, geez, you did 700 buildings? And they said, yeah. Well, I said, for sure, we can do 1,500 here in the US, right? We could do 1,500 buildings. It's easy. Come on, guys, let's do 15. Come on. And I rallied the troops and everyone said, yeah. So we did a little roll call thing on who wanted to be involved. And it was the dumbest thing ever, but we created a board from like 8 or 9 people who raised their hand during this Zoom call, and for no other reason than they raised their hand. And so we said, okay, we're going to have sort of an exploratory meeting on Friday, 2 days later, and see if this is actually something we want to do. Well, by Friday, we had commitments from so many people. By Friday, we had, so long story short, I don't even remember the final number, but it was around 4,000 buildings that got lit.
Wow.
We had tens of thousands of people involved. We had probably 150 artists involved who did these little public service announcements. Hi, I'm Alice Cooper, and this hashtag We Make Events. You got to get behind this thing, and I mean, it was really one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. And then it just became miserable because I realized I don't know how to run a not-for-profit that's not even set up yet. And then we toyed with becoming a 501c3 and should we, shouldn't we? And honestly, it's so hard to keep that going and to keep people interested. And then you find out, wait, I'm the only one on this conference call. Nobody else dialed in. Am I really the only one who believes in this? And so it just became challenging. And it was like, why are we doing this? Yeah, Adrian just reminded me we lit the Empire State Building in red that night. So, and it was funny because we didn't get the yes until they actually turned on the lights that night in red for us and said, oh, by the way, we did it. And we're like, oh, thanks. So, yeah, I mean, I commend you guys for, especially you, Lori, you've been doing it for so friggin' long. And
But it's all about the volunteers. You know, it's all about the dedicated volunteers. Our boards, our committees, the task groups of people who put in countless hours to make sure that, you know, the charity is fulfilling its mission.
But it's funny because people think that it's such a small job. All you have to do is give away money, you know, and, you know, I mean, that's so simple. All you're doing is giving away money and helping people. That's not that hard of a job. And, but I mean, the collecting part is really hard. Asking people to either part with cash or part with their time, you know, are both very challenging things to do. And some will do it a little bit, but then ask them a second time and it gets harder and harder and harder. So yeah, I really commend you guys on your work, and I appreciate everything you're doing. And hopefully, you know, we got enough people here today to make a difference, and some people are going to share this. Hopefully, everyone listening, share it on your Facebook, share it on LinkedIn, share it on wherever we are, YouTube, and let's get the word out, because at some point, everyone needs, right? At some point in their life, everyone falls into a situation where, you know, sometimes it's just, I need lunch today. I'll be fine tomorrow, but today I need lunch, you know? So, yeah. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you, and keep up the hard work. And if I can ever do anything to help, and I'm serious, I'm going to look into adding a donate button next to our checkout thing in our card on Gear Source. So
that would be wonderful.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Good to see you.